took cautious public positions on slavery in the 40s. As Chief Justice, Taney carefully steered the court away from expansive decisions when slavery was an issue, insisting that the relevant state law governed. In his single term in the House of Representatives in the late 40s, Lincoln did not take a leadership role on the slavery issue. His only initiative on the subject was to propose a referendum for the District of Columbia that abolished slavery, but enforced the fugitive slave law and compensated slave owners who freed their slaves. His compromise proposal did not satisfy either abolitionist or pro-slavery members of Congress and was never formally introduced. During the 1850s, Taney and Lincoln moved to center stage in the increasingly rancorous national debate over slavery. In his Dred Scott opinion, Taney declared that the U.S. Constitution did not grant the black man any rights that the white man was bound to honor. Taney also held that Congress could not prohibit the spread of slavery in the Western territories. Shortly after Taney announced the court's Dred Scott decision in 1857, Lincoln attacked it as a warped judicial interpretation of the framers' intent. Lincoln made his opposition to the court's decision a major theme in his campaign for the Senate in 1858. In the famous Lincoln-Douglas debates, Lincoln denounced the Dred Scott decision and accused Douglas and Taney of being members of a pro-slavery national conspiracy. In his presidential inaugural address in 1861, Lincoln insisted that the South had no legal right to secede. Chief Justice Taney disagreed. He not only believed that secession was legal, but also that a peaceful separation of North and South with each section forming an independent republic was preferable to civil war. Once 11 states in the South had seceded, Lincoln broadly interpreted his constitutional powers as commander-in-chief to prosecute the war. Chief Justice Taney vociferously dissented, accusing Lincoln of assuming dictatorial powers in violation of the Constitution. This book will trace the long, sometimes torturous journeys that brought Lincoln and Taney to their final judgments and actions on the issues that threatened the survival of the United States. Chapter 1. A Moonlight Mind. Roger Brooke Taney was born on St. Patrick's Day, 1777, in a 3-story white clapboard house set on the crest of a gentle hill overlooking the Patuxent River in southern Maryland. Taney's birthplace had served as home to 5 generations of Taneys, beginning with the first, Michael Taney, who had immigrated from England in 1660. Michael I, as he was known in Taney family lore, initially worked the land as an indentured servant. After paying off his debt, he acquired a small plot of land and gradually expanded his holdings to several thousand acres. The land was fertile and particularly conducive to the growth of tobacco, which found an eager market in Great Britain. Michael I prospered, befriended other leaders in the colony, including Lord Baltimore, and was pleased to be referred to as Michael Taney, Gentleman. The flourishing tobacco economy of southern Maryland transformed the Taneys into members of that region's landed aristocracy. Slaves labored in their fields and served them in their plantation home. Succeeding generations of Taneys rode to hounds, entertained neighbors on a grand scale, and married other members in their high social class. Michael II inherited the estate overlooking the Patuxent and married Dorothy Brooke, a descendant of Robert Brooke, who traced his family roots to William the Conqueror. Sometime between the 1st and 4th generation, the Taneys, who were originally members of the Church of England, converted to Catholicism. Michael V, the future Chief Justice's father, was educated at a Catholic English school at Saint-Omer in France before assuming his position as gentleman planter and leader of the prominent Taney family. But Michael V's boisterous personality and restless nature were not well suited to his designated aristocratic station. He was a loud, hard-drinking sportsman who was happiest fishing, shooting wild geese, and fox hunting. And he had a volcanic temper. In 1819, Michael stabbed another man to death in an argument over the honor of a woman. He fled to Virginia. A year later, he was thrown from a horse and died. It was said that Roger Taney inherited his father's temper, but little else. He was a frail, bookish boy who appeared to be greatly influenced by his mother, Monica Brooke Taney. She possessed a kind, sensitive nature, which her son lovingly recalled. She was pious, gentle, and affectionate, retiring and domestic in her tastes, he wrote. I never in my life heard her say an angry or unkind word to any of her children or servants, nor speak ill of anyone. As an adult, Roger would emulate his mother in his compassionate treatment of his own children and the family's slaves. Roger's older brother, Michael VI, was destined to inherit the family estate. Education, therefore, became particularly important for Roger, so that he might acquire the knowledge and skills necessary to fulfill his father's ambition that he should become a lawyer. As small boys, Roger and his older brother walked 3 miles to a tutor whose qualifications were limited to a modest ability to read and write. Later, the 2 boys boarded at a grammar school 10 miles from the Taney estate. But the teacher was delusional and drowned in the Patuxent River after acting upon his misguided belief that he could walk on water. Finally, Roger came under the excellent tutelage of Princeton-educated David English, who instructed the boy until he was sent away at the age of 15 to Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. For the next 3 years, Roger took classes in ethics, metaphysics, logic, and criticism with the brilliant head of the college, Dr. Charles Nisbet, a Presbyterian minister from Montrose, Scotland. He also studied languages, mathematics, and geography with other members of the faculty. At graduation, Roger was chosen to make the valedictory address, an honor that he modestly devalued, pointing out that his selection was based neither on grades nor the faculty's judgment, but rather on the vote of his fellow students. Taney returned to the family estate in 1796 and spent the winter days fox hunting and eating lavishly. In the evenings, the Taney men and their male neighbors gathered around the fireside to swap stories, frequently about the courtroom triumphs of 2 of the state's legendary trial lawyers, Luther Martin and William Pinckney. These anecdotes were particularly welcomed by Michael V, who made no secret of his desire to have his intense, intellectually gifted son, Roger, study law. Later that year, at the age of 19, Roger was dispatched to Annapolis to read law in the chambers of Jeremiah Chase, one of the 3 judges of the General Court. For the next 3 years, Taney pored over law books for 12 hours a day. And when he was not studying, he sat in court taking notes on the techniques and arguments of the leading trial lawyers. After Taney was admitted to the bar in 1799, he anxiously prepared to try his first case in Annapolis's Mayor's Court. His client was a man charged with assault and battery in a fistfight in which neither combatant was severely hurt. For Taney, the details of his legal argument were the least of his problems. He was paralyzed with terror at the thought of his first courtroom argument, his fright compounded by consuming concern over his fragile health. His hands shook uncontrollably and his knees trembled throughout the ordeal of the trial. Taney, nonetheless, won the case. Even as an experienced litigator, Taney never completely overcame a chronic panic when he rose to speak in court. My system was put out of order by slight exposure, he recalled, and I could not go through the excitement and mental exertion of a court, which lasted 2 or 3 weeks, without feeling at the end of it that my strength was impaired and I needed repose. His worries about his health were unrelenting, and so were his courtroom successes. After a brief time in Annapolis, Taney moved to Frederick, Maryland, where he built a thriving law practice. He married Anne Key, the sister of Taney's close friend, Frank Key, who became famous later as Francis Scott Key, the composer of the national anthem. Anne Key Taney embodied many of the attributes of Roger's adored mother. She was gentle and kind and appeared, over the years, to moderate her husband's dark moods and quick temper. Together they raised 6 daughters, all in Anne's Episcopal faith. Once, when a local priest visited the Taneys to press his case for Catholicism on the Taney children, Roger abruptly interrupted, informing the clergyman that religious debate was not allowed in his home. Michael V expected